So beat the poor kid. Where does that come from? This is this. I mean, in California, if you visit the missions and you visit the cell of Father Sierra, on the little shelf they had his whip that he used on himself. So it was a tradition. You know, you have to punish the body and not feed it. I mean, obviously you have to eat something, otherwise it's going to die. And you weren't supposed to let it go that far. But how far could you push it? And a lot of people, I remember even when Pope John Paul II, who is now a saint, I believe, officially, already, he gave speeches, sermons to people, huge crowds in the islands in the Philippines, I think it was, or Indonesia, one of those. He traveled around, gave speeches, and what he basically told people was, appreciate your suffering. He didn't suggest ways of improving your life. That wasn't the point. The whole point was to accept the sufferings of this life and focus on your soul and your future life in heaven. That's where your riches are, not here. Please.
Do you see a difference between pain and suffering?
We have two different words for two different reasons. So some pain might actually be interpreted as pleasure. I'm sure that folks that beat the crap out of themselves enjoyed it. That feels to me like an illness, a mental illness today. And by the way, my attraction to the seminary, which was very much there, I was raised Roman Catholic, the role models of male individuals were priests that I saw. I mean, my dad went to work. I didn't see him till he came home and sat in a chair tired, you know. So the image I had of where my future should be was thinking I should go to seminary, become a priest, et cetera, do what my role models were showing me that they were doing. By the way, I had no issue with a lot of the controversies associated with those kinds of relationships. It did not happen, at least in my experience. But in any case, the scare of giving up the life that was so prevalent in my high school, end of high school, entering college, was so much that I decided I would at least go to college for a while. And I especially, around that age, I know it's silly, but as a Roman Catholic, I didn't know about sex until senior year of high school. And then it was Father Meyer gave a lecture in religion class and told us how it worked, basically. And I remember this is all males in the classroom, and some of them were really rude and asked questions that I just thought were absolutely horrific. But that Saturday, a friend of mine and I went to the Free Library in Philadelphia, and we went to the restricted section. And we took down one of the books that went, roar, and we looked, and there were pictures. So this was true. And when I came home that day, I remember passing my mother and father's bedroom door and thinking, they must have done this at least 5 times. Because there were 5 of us. This is senior year. I'm learning this. Holy crap. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on that, you know, I always thought the strange people at the high school right next to us that wore skirts, they were strange people. You could see them from off in the distance, but there was something alluring about them. And by the way, after the class, Father Meyer smoked a cigarette. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but it seemed to me afterwards.
Was indoors or you got outdoors for that?
We were indoors for that. A lot of my philosophy professors smoked in class. The existentialists especially. part of the allure. But I couldn't keep to that after finding out about something that interesting. I had to find out more. So I wanted to go to college mostly so I could date, etc. And one thing led to another. Donna and I got married in 10/7/72. So this October will be our 51st anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's amazing to me that she's kept me all these years. Same jokes, etc. Well, so I obviously at that point couldn't become a monk. So I was committed. I was still very interested in becoming a priest, and I converted, so to speak, to the Episcopalian Church, which I thought was amazingly approximate to the Roman Catholic dogma, minus the Pope, and actually a little bit more formalism, which I really liked, because it was high church. If you're familiar with the Episcopal Church, there's high and low, depending on where you are. High is very close to Roman Catholic formalism, etc. In any case, I applied and was accepted at two seminaries, Episcopal Divinity School and a general seminary. Episcopal Divinity School is the religion department at Harvard, and General Seminary is an independent seminary in New York. Very interesting stories about both. The application process, I was supposed to go within a year. I hadn't decided which of the seminaries I would go to. There were pluses and minuses both. And then I ended up deciding to go into the Army. So you can see, I at that point committed myself to a life of wealth and physical pleasures, as opposed to even the proximate view of giving up everything in response to Jesus' suggestion to the wealthy man. So, very interesting. But if we tie it in now to our contemporary situation, where there are 8 billion of us, roughly, since last November they count roughly 8 billion. We just lost over 2,000 in Morocco, but you get the idea. We've got a lot more people. When I was born, there were approximately 1 billion, maybe 1.5 billion people. Now there are 8 billion people in one lifetime. How do you count that? That's not just twice. That's more than 4 times growth in 70 plus years of living, right? And we argue among ourselves that global warming may be a result of our living standards, all the carbon that we're using, right? And as a result of all of that, and by the way, not everybody, of course, of the 8 billion are living that kind of life. I think that's one of the reasons why so many want to come to the United States, because if you want to live that kind of life, Northern Europe and the United States seem to be the places to go. And so, since Northern Europe is a little bit icier in some ways, I think the same reason that we don't have that big crowd all moving into Alaska. It's a real secret, actually. So they are trying, of course, to come into the United States because they want that same kind of life. But of course, if we imagine 8 billion people all living using the same kind of carbon footprint, as we call it, of people, say, in Alaska, the global warming would quadruple, or at least, right? In fact, I mean, of the things that you could do to help global warming, decrease would be not live in Alaska, because of all the people in the world, the ones with the biggest carbon footprint are Americans. And of Americans, the ones with the biggest carbon footprint are people who live in Alaska. Because everything has to be shipped here, a lot of it by air. That's why prices are so high, etc. Right?
I mean, isn't that more a consequence of the infrastructure, the transportation infrastructure, rather than us personally generating that carbon footprint?
Well, how else are you going to get fruit from Chile at cars?
Yeah, through like, shipping and all that, but that isn't necessarily our fault. We're not the,
I buy the fruit
piloting
from
the
cars.
plane.
The demand is what
Encourage them.
generates that.
Yeah, our
It
demand,
wouldn't be
yeah.
shipped through those routes if the demand didn't exist.
I mean, yeah, but the demand is out of necessity. You can't just have, normal people to live up here without any stuff being
Well, the point I'm trying to get to is this kind of consumer-based life where just Saturday we got a new refrigerator and a new dryer. The dryer was 20 years old and had kaputted itself, and the refrigerator was being held together with duct tape. Did I say that? So now we have two new devices from South Korea. They're LG. Consumer Reports said these are the best, and my wife is a member of the Church of Consumer Reports, and that's the best one. Boom! And we went to Lowe's, and she gave them the number, and they ordered it for us, and they arrived. Just barely fit through the door, by the way. It was like, and that was with the door off. But that's a story, But in any case, we're consumers. We're doing where our carbon footprint is as huge, I suppose, except for people I know and love, actually, who are primarily focused on ecological morality, who spend much more time flying places to give lectures on how to live the good life and use way more energy than I do, because I don't go any place except with Google Earth. That's how I like to travel. No plane for me, those little metal tubes you get into and they shoot you at 500 miles an hour or more through the air with crying babies. And sometimes you even have to sit on seats that had recently been vomited on, apparently. Ugh. And you could get thrown off the plane for complaining about it. Sorry. You get the idea? Living the life, the dream, is destroying nature, theoretically. Right? Living a life without stuff might be the way to have avoided that. Well, that's just an interesting aspect of the whole dilemma, right? Maybe we're destroying the world by not following that kind of life. And by the way, I don't know if I know everyone's not a follower of Jesus or that sort of thing, but Buddhism is the same, right? In fact, if we think about the axial age, did I mention this at all? Didn't I show that page? Maybe not. So this is Karl Jaspers. His argument that this particular period, and Socrates is one of those examples, but the Buddha and Master Kung and others besides all seem to occur roughly within this same period and were rebellious against the standard priestly castes that the societies had all developed. And so roughly all at about the same time, what you see is this point where societies rebelled against this priestly class and began something different, which was thinking, using some other way of figuring out what ought to be